What's up, guys? Chris the Atari Creep here, and this is the first installment in a series I'm going to call Atari 101. This episode is going to be about the Atari cartridges themselves. I find this to be a very fascinating subject simply because of just who was making them, the variety of the looks of them, and hopefully you'll find this as interesting as I do. And I won't use the word blows my mind every 10 minutes like I did in the first 4 takes of this. And the reason I'm choosing this one again is because when you think of cartridges in general, you think of like say a Nintendo cartridge. There's really not many variations of it. There's a few. Tengen made those little black carts with a little point at the end, and you got like Wisdom Tree. They had those like baby blue ones and what have you. But generally, for the most part, they were all just gray. Unless of course Nintendo made a gold card, but. And it was like that with every other system. Pretty much every Genesis game looks the same except for maybe a red one here and there. And Atari 2600, that is. It's not like that at all. So many companies were able to make them. So many companies did make them. And you'll see that each cartridge has a little hint from the other one. And it almost looks like one company was making third-party cartridges for almost all of them with slight variations. So, without this turning into a 20-minute video, let's just jump right into it. So I'm going to show you the first generation of Atari cartridges. These are first party. And they all basically look like this, just simple text labels, lowercase font. That's important to know right now. Okay? So we got Space War. Some of them are red, some of them are gold, some of them are silver. And that's what the end labels would look like. And they're pretty cool. They don't scream fun, but they scream tech. And that's really what it was all about then. It was tech geeks making games for tech geeks. And that screams tech. So, and then you have, I almost dropped one, Combat. Everyone knows Combat. This is probably the one cartridge that everyone has a million copies of if you collect Atari. And the only real thing to really note about this here is, you'll notice right there, it says CX2601. Okay? Now, back when these were being made, the Atari 2600 was really called the Atari VCS. On the bottom, on the little label, it would say Model CX2600. And that's where we get the 2600 from. Why they chose that one, I don't know. Maybe I'll do some research on that one if I do a console video. But they also continued that with their games. And simply put, CX2601 meant this was the first game they published for the system. Whereas, say here, Space War was the 4th. And so on and so on. Here we go with the 23rd game, Home Run. So that's the first rendition of them. That ran from 78 to about 80, I believe, or 77 to about 80-ish, give or take. Then they came out with picture labels that were pretty cool. And you'll notice in these ones the font is now all uppercase. But the cool thing about these ones is the paintings on there, they almost look like a watercolorish one. So there's Video Olympics. That's basically just Pong. Outlaw. This is one of my favorite ones. I love westerns, and that just screams cool. And they continue with the CX labels here, and it says Outlaw there in uppercase lettering. And Missile Command. I would still consider this part of the watercolor. That's what I'm calling them. But you'll notice it's uppercase here, but lowercase here. So this might be like in the transitional period. I don't know, or maybe they just didn't know what direction they were going in. Or someone just fucked up and forgot. But that's that. Now the next variation is what I call the cartoony labels. And you have games like Demons of Diamonds, Space Invaders, and Yar's Revenge, one of my favorites of all time. Again, they got the uppercase lettering and all that. And another thing to note is, when they were first coming out, let's see if you can see it, it's like this weird protective thing that hides the chip. Or the ROM, whatever you want to call it. And when you insert it into the game, I actually have one here that's a little malfunctioning. When you insert it into the game, the thing goes like that, and it shows the chip. Now, different variations of these games have that, some don't. And even Atari themselves, let's say Yar's Revenge here, wasn't there. I don't know why. So, we go with the Sears Tele games that were producing cartridges at the same time. Basically, Atari was making these and just repackaging them for Sears Tele games. They both had labels. And at the end it says Pac-Man. And They also had text ones, and this is more typical of a Sears Tele game, unless it was a big name like Pac-Man. But you know, Target Fun is the same thing as the RC Battle, so you know, either game works just fine. This was packaged with my video arcade unit, so you know they did that for Sears as well. Now later on, they decided to do a foil package kind of deal, and they would make labels like this, and it would still have a depiction of the game, a really cool, unrealistic depiction. You know, solid line. It'll say Phoenix. And if you notice above it, there's like a kind of a rainbow there. That comes into play later on. They even put that on their games, and all their packaging after this point for systems and games looks just like this. And you'll notice it actually says 2600 here. So this must have been after '82 when this one was printed. Yep, 1982. Jungle Hunt, same thing, just slightly different. You know, with the smaller Atari up there. Centipede, my favorite game, and you know, uppercase font. So there's really nothing more to say about these ones other than, I mean, they're pretty much solid here. They got a nice texture grip to them. But one of the problems with them is if you stack more than, say, 3 together, they would do that and they'd fall out of your hands, and it became annoying. And the next company rectified that. So we will move on to that. Now, a couple guys from Atari felt that they weren't getting the recognition they needed, and they weren't getting paid for their creative talents and such. So they went off to start a company called Activision, who were the kings of video game programming for the Atari. They also made games for other systems, but we're talking about Atari here. And this is typical of an Activision cartridge. Now it looks pretty similar, same shape and everything. The exception is their label continues all the way around. Different font, of course. And they always had these little boring depictions of what the game looked like, but it was to the point. This is what you're going to be getting. You know, information, 1-player, 2-player, use a paddle, all kinds of stuff. But then they started adding like little grippy things on it, and it would say Activision right here, so you knew for sure it wasn't an Atari licensed game. It was their own thing. So there's a version of that. It's one of my favorite games of all time. You know, Spider Fighter and say Keystone Capers. And the reason I brought these out is if you notice the labels aren't really as perfect as the other one is, and it almost looks like something spilt on it, but that's not the case. The glue they were using to put these labels on seeped through the labels and would discolor them, and it's called Actiplaque. So if you see one that looks like this, in more cases you are going to. Don't think it's completely damaged or anything, because that's very common. So, and again, no protective deal. So they thought they were doing well with that. But then they put those little, little deals on the side. I almost forgot to mention this. This is very important. If you look real close here, there's this line. That's an indentation. And on the other side, there's an embossed line. That was meant so you could stack them like that, and they ain't going nowhere. No matter which way you go, this way or this way. So that's pretty cool. Other companies did that too, and it's almost like they were communicating, but I doubt that's the case. Alright, let's see. Let's get into the weirdness. And this is my favorite part of the whole subject. Okay. Here's a company called Coleco. We all know Coleco. They made the ColecoVision. ColecoVision was awesome. They made the Atom computer. That was awesome too. Well, they made games for Atari, and we all know that. So this is a basic idea of what their cartridge looks like. You know, they put that little grip thing here, and they have a little bit on the side that's very reminiscent of Activision. So here we go, another variation of the same idea. They made sure their name was boldly printed on there. And here's one right here. It says 2600 and VCS. And again, because you know, most people call it VCS, other people call it 2600, and just to clear the confusion, they would put it both on there. Which leads me to another Atari variation that I completely missed, with these purple or maroon ones that came out later in the system. And you'll notice there it says both 2600 VCS. And they were boring and stuff, so apologize for jumping away from that. But this one's pretty cool, but this is where the weirdness starts. You have an Atari game made by a competitor called Coleco, and I believe this game, if I'm not mistaken, is a Konami game from 1983. But wait, children, there's more. Donkey Kong. We have a competitor making a game for a competing system by a competing company, Nintendo. Now, obviously, Nintendo wasn't making hardware yet in the States, but it's still weird. Just think of it this way, okay? Let's say Nintendo came out with a brand new Mario game today, and Microsoft got the license to publish it for the PlayStation 4. That's exactly what you're looking at right here. So it's pretty cool. Now we just have Venture. Nothing weird going on with here. Let me see if there's a... No, Exidy. They didn't really do anything but publish video games, so... This is the one that's the most bizarre to me, and it's probably the ugliest cartridges. And the second I said that, I guarantee you know what it is. But it's these little black ones with no picture, nothing. It just says what it is. Space Attack game. You got Lock and Chase. This is actually a really good game. But if you notice right here, see if I can get it into the light. It says the M Network, and it has this really cool M there. Okay. And on this side, it says Mattel Electronics Inc. Well, actually, it just says Mattel Inc. And people always wondered what was the deal with these. Well, you know who Mattel Electronics were, and you know what they made back in 82, 83. Actually, they made it in 78, I believe. It was called the Intellivision. Now look at that cartridge. Okay, there's an Intellivision cartridge. Weird. Yeah, they actually reproduced their own product, added a little deal on there so it can go into the Atari VCS. This was their competitor. They made this to take out Atari. And their system was a little stronger, but still just didn't make it because Atari rules, you know? But that's just fucking weird. Now, don't get me wrong, Atari made games for them too, and they made games for the ColecoVision. So it was like these three main companies. I mean, there were a few others, all making games for each other, but yet they were still competing. And this is what's so fascinating about all this. So, with that, let's get to some bigger name cartridges that just look pretty cool. Okay, this doesn't go into more weirdness. It's just the coolness of the cartridges themselves. Parker Brothers. Says it right there. We go. Parker Brothers. And they got all these cool little ridges, but look at the shape of that. It's pretty cool how it's got this little line here, and you know. And Parker Brothers continued this look with all their system copies. The 5200 looks just like this. Is just huge. The Intellivision ones are as small as the Intellivision games, but they look just like this. And Parker Brothers, I think, have one of the nicest looking labels or cartridges. And again, nothing to protect it because that thing would just keep breaking. So everyone else besides Atari said, you know what, we're just not going to have that. Just another version of that reactor. You have to figure this damn game out. I've watched a lot of videos on gameplay, and I don't know what's going on, but it's such a cool looking cartridge. Let's see, Data Age. You may remember they came out with a whole bunch of games. This one's Journey Escape. And again, just one piece label, which makes it easy to glue back down if it comes up. And the foil ones tended to withstand the glue a little better. You can find a bunch more of these that look better. And again, no protective thing. But they got the little grippy things similar to the Activision cartridges, but they have this similar to the Parker Brother cartridges. So I think that's pretty cool. One of my favorites are these iMagic or eMagic or eMagic cartridges. You know, again, foil label, and just slightly different. You know, and they still have the little dilly here. Let's see, what other company had that exact one? The next one I'm going to be showing you. So instead of just putting ridges here, they just put a whole dent there altogether to grab, and there's no doubt about it. You can grab it that way. But they put little lines here, and they have their company logo on there. And again, unrealistic depiction of what the game is. Demon Attack, awesome game, by the way. Cosmic Arc, still a good game, but whatever. They also had another variation of these cartridges, and unfortunately I don't have an example of that, where the whole thing is silver, and this little like rainbow thing is just covering the whole front, and it'll say Cosmic Arc in the same place. So I unfortunately don't have any of those. The next company is US Games. So this is weird, okay? This is, to me it is, okay? So you have, I don't know which versions came out first, so just bear with me. We have this Eggomaniac. It's awesome. I love this. Eggomania. I love this game, and this cartridge is just so weird. It's kind of like a little bit of everything, but it's like the bastard stepchild of some of the other games. Nothing really to note about the sides, but it's got this really neat thing to pop it out, and of course, nothing to protect the ROM. And then US Games either went on to make these or, you know, made these first, but like that. And this is what I'm talking about with the indentation. So you got cartridges like this with it, and cartridges like this with it, and they're just slightly different, you know. And it clearly states US Games here. Now check this out. This is a US Games too. But notice the name up here. It's not the same. Same logo, and it does say US Games down here, and the labels are exactly the same kind, but for some reason they call this one VidTech. I don't know why. Everything else is exactly the same, so who knows? If you know, let me know, right? Here's another one that's very similar to the Activision ones. It's kind of like a cross between the Activision and the Atari first party. And I'm assuming that this one here is kind of like a generic cartridge that was made at a factory for whoever wanted to make games, because there's like a spot here for a company logo that's unutilized. But this one's Telsey, and this is Cosmic Creeps. Creep! Another cartridge that looks kind of similar to that, with its own variation, is 20th Century Fox made their own games too. They made a lot of games licensed off of movies and TV shows like MASH, Alien, stuff like that. This is World War One, and you notice it's just one piece label. So this is a very reminiscent of an Activision game. You know, and you know this game is weird because it sounds like the Atari is trying to throw up. But you know, they get the ridges here, but they continue on with it a little longer. And they did kind of the same thing that Activision did with the little notches, but they're a lot smaller. They're about half the length, but they still work. You know, they just won't work with the Activision ones. So that's one of their first variants of labels. And then they went on to do these, and these are the ones that are more common. Like I said, you can find one for the TV show MASH. You can find one for the movie Aliens. This one's Revenge of the Beefsteak Tomatoes. This is a great game. And you notice there's no end label name there. What the hell? Whereas on Porky's, yes, they made a game about the movie Porky's for the Atari 2600. And this game's not that good. It's, I don't know. We'll do a review of it someday. But apparently they couldn't get the full license to do Revenge of the Tomatoes, or the, you know, whatever that was. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. How do you forget that name? So they just kind of changed the name. And this game, it's probably the most busiest Atari game with the coolest gameplay. And I promise you, we will do a video on this one. You just got to remind me. And let's see, the last of the variations I have here are from CBS Electronics. Now, they ain't the same CBS that you would think of with the television show. But they had these ones that were kind of like this darker cream. And they were very boring labels, but they would tell you what, you know, in your face, the game's Wizard of War, you need a joystick, how many people can play, and all kinds of stuff. And it even tells you what you need to do right here in case you lose the paperwork for it, you know. You just shoot every Gwar ward, and Thor ward, and bullseyes, and beat the wizard, and joystick ready, go, you know. Boring, but cool still. Solar Fox, one of my top 5s. You know, and labels, bright yellow, screams at you, play me, play me. And of course they got those little lines like the Activision games do. And this is really great for stacking on shelves if you're going to have them like this, you know, because they're not going to go anywhere. So you can take a couple of those, you can put an Activision one underneath it if you really want to, and they're not going anywhere. So those are variations of every Atari 2600/VCS that I have. And the other ones that I didn't mention so far because I don't own any is they had some that were called double enders when there were cartridges like that, and you pop it in this way or pop it in this way, and there's a game on both sides. There are some that are orange, like Jawbreaker. There's like a white cartridge with a bunny on it. They have some with like a T grip on the top. It would be, you know, a line coming up here and a T, so you pull it out. Some of them had like this weird deal here. Everyone just tried to do something a little different with them. Atari 2600, I think it was third party, but there was also a cassette player deal that you could play games on, like an old audio cassette. So, you know, whereas after this, everything was standardized, and, you know, you got a Nintendo cartridge, and it looked like a Nintendo cartridge. And you got a Sega cartridge, and it looked like a Sega cartridge. And everything just looked the same after that. But I hope almost 20 minutes of looking at these cartridges and me just talking about them in a semi-enthusiastic manner was entertaining and educational for you. And remember, most of these games don't cost more than $1. I mean, there's a few like this Mario Bros. Because it says Mario on it. It'll cost you a little bit extra, but that's why I enjoy collecting these. One, because I love Atari and I grew up with it, and it's nostalgic to me. But it's just the different variations. You know, it's not the same boring thing across the whole shelf, and it just looks cool when you're collecting. So guys, with that, I want to thank you for watching this whole thing if you did. God, this is probably going to be my longest video. Subscribe if you haven't, and if this is the first time here, please do. Thumbs up and thumbs down. I always tell everybody that all feedback is positive. Leave a comment. What's your favorite thing about collecting Atari video games? What's your favorite thing to collect? Let me know. Post a video response. Best way to do that is find me on my Facebook page and post it there. Just look for the Atari Creep. I'm also on Instagram, same name, the Atari Creep. So go ahead and go over there. I do pictures almost daily, and sometimes they're entertaining. So guys, I hope you enjoyed installment number 1 of Atari 101, and there'll be a lot more to come. I just have to fish through my brain and figure out what I want to do next. So if you have any ideas, let me know. With that, guys, if you haven't seen the other video I posted this week, it's called Don't Be Afraid of Ugly Things Part 2. Should be right below this one. Check that out too. You got 2 in the same weekend, as promised for once. And guys, with that, I'm just going to sign out because I got to edit this, go to bed because I got work in the morning. So you guys take care, and hope you have a great week. And this is the Atari Creep wishing you a fond farewell, and bye-bye.